So please do take the time to complete the survey and give us the feedback on the event, what we can do better, etc. On that note, welcome everyone. I think yesterday was a very educational day for all of us, very emotive, very triggering. Many items were discussed. From my side, as I reflected, and from an introduction perspective, it's my first year at the Indaba. I sit on the board of the National Shelter Movement. Fatima Mahmoud, from a qualification and background perspective, I'm a chartered accountant. I work in corporate, and this has always been my passion. And through progressive sheltering is why I stand here. And I think someone yesterday made the comment, 30 years on, and we're still talking about this, but it's because of all the work 30 years on that all of you are doing that I can stand here before you. Because I was one of those, I think Dr. Zubaydah mentioned, what do women shelters do? And I was one of those who also thought we just house women and that's it. And as we get involved and we hear the stories, we realize there's so much more. So progressive sheltering is exactly that, is to bring more women and men like me who are young to be able to take this forward. We are passionate about this, but we don't know how to get involved. And progressive sheltering is what is helping. And for me, we spoke about the theme yesterday being hope. For me, it's about gratitude. I think sometimes we get so stuck in certain narratives that we perpetuate for ourselves. And I realize that with so many things, and that's why I want to say today, let's take a moment to have gratitude. There's so many things, and yesterday we heard of what's not working. A million. I can stand here and I can tell you myself. But there are things that are right. Why are we not reflecting on those? Why are we not being grateful on that journey? And yes, I have been privileged to travel a lot. And every time I come back, I stand here proud. I can't tell you, I can get on the floor and kiss our soil. Our government does many things. That's not what we want. But let's talk about the things that they are doing, that's what we want. Just for us here to be able to sit with our government counterparts. There's so many people when I travel and they ask, how are you so comfortable? You just speak. We can't speak. And we can stand here with them and constructively criticize. In the opening, it was said, right, we're here, we're listening. Let's work on this. We need them. Our government is one that makes me so proud because we can stand on a global platform and say, this is wrong. And we are not going to be silenced by what the Western powers say. We can stand up on that global platform. And that's the government that I want to work with because they are here to hear as well. And yes, I hold them accountable, but there's a way. We spoke yesterday, and it's so imperative, the language. I can say the same thing, and you'll either be combative and reactive in your response, or I can change my message. And that, for me, is what progressive sheltering is about. And that is why we're all here. How do we change it to partner? Let's collaborate with them. Let's hold them accountable. And let's bring in more corporates. Why don't we have that much of representation in here? As South Africans and through civil society and the actions we've taken, we've come such a long way. And corporates are there, and Sean spoke about this, right? And that's why I'm here, because there is the help. There's people like me, we want to make a difference. We want to help. We know how corporates think. And since I've joined with the National Shelter Movement, it's what I'm saying, let's talk about return on investment. I sit with Dr. Zubaydah and I'm like, this is the way. Yesterday we were talking and I'm like, give me access. I'll come and talk to your shareholders. I will show you the value, because it's not just sheltering women. So how can we, all aspects of society, come together? And that's why I'm saying I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity of being here. I'm grateful to be able to sit with our government who is doing. Are they doing enough? We can debate that. But then how can we work with them to do more? Right? And it's through gratitude, and it's through changing our language, it's through changing our narrative, it's through coming out. And I was so happy we spoke about trauma and the impact that trauma has on your brain. And when you're in that stressed out situation, I understand where the NPOs are coming from. You're stuck in that, and when you're consistently hearing comply or otherwise you won't get funding, it can trigger you. So I understand completely where you're coming from. My view is we had representation nationally from government saying, yes, we're saying that, but let's look at how we're going to help you get it. There's interim measures. There's our call to action. Why then are we focusing on that aspect? Why are we not changing the narrative to say, national department was here and they said, we're going to work with you. Let's look at how we can help you, Shirley, to find that funding, because we can hear how stressed out you are. So why are we not talking from that lens? And that is my recap and my message, and what I want to bring in here is to say, absolutely, let's talk about it, but let's talk from a way of collaboratively working together with them, because without them, we won't be able to. We absolutely cannot. And they're absolutely willing, otherwise they wouldn't be here. And that is a testament. We've had the youth involved, and we look, data is our currency right now. NPOs, you're doing fantastic work, but no one hears about it. We're not seeing it. We are the generation that works digitally. So evolve to get your message. The value is there. Right? So we're going in, create. I love the term Sean used, that demand culture. Create it. Demand it. Show for it. We're going, when I go with sometimes, and when I'm asking for the NPOs, I feel like I'm holding my hands with a bowl begging. That's not the perspective and the narrative. I stand here like this to say, this is the value, this is what I'm doing, here's the real stories. How can someone, when you hear that, not fund you? How can they not? I was asked, I think someone asked, what's the face of gender-based violence? And for me, progressive sheltering is to ensure absolutely it's the poorest of the poor. We need to ensure safety for that. But what about for women like me? What about for women like you and you? When you both shared and you expressed middle-class, high-powered women, we go through it as well. We don't know where to go to. Do you know the amount of shame that covers it? Because when we raise it, we're judged. Oh, wow, you look like this, and you're complaining about that. And who's judging you? It's other women. When what should I be doing? It doesn't matter all of that. I'm here, I hear you, in your story is mine. Right? Progressive sheltering is to say, we're helping those, and Fatima, this is how I can help you and you. Because we are all the face of that. And we are all the face of gender-based violence. We all have experienced it in some form, right? It starts small. And it starts small, and when you speak, and it's the woman who come first, right? To say, what did you do? The first time I raised it with my family, my mom said, you must have done something to deserve that. And we talk about changing the fabric of society, and that's where we live through, right? Then you go into hospital, and I'm like, I fell down the stairs. And the doctor who saw me is like, I know, we hear that a lot. Do you need the help? But we're too ashamed. Because we don't know where to go to. Because I look like this, it possibly can't be me, right? Oh no. And I'm saying for me, and why I stand here is because that's what progressive sheltering is about. Let's be inclusive for everyone. Middle class, in corporates, it absolutely exists. When I heard Dr. Brody talk about the impact of alcohol, there was a comment made that was just not right to me. In the corporate space, and you raise it, and my counterpart stood there and said, well, I was drunk when I said that, so it doesn't count. And I'm not going to apologize. There were many women sitting there as well, and it's like, oh, you know what, just let it go. But why should we? Because it starts with that. And those are the discussions as progressive shelters and as NPOs, together with corporate, together with government. Let's embrace all of that, because sheltering is so much more than just providing a space for women who come from that aspect. The first time I heard my neighbor, I don't know if it was her husband or her partner, hardly used to come. The one evening, you just hear the terror. I was traumatized sitting in the comfort of my house, and she's screaming, please stop. And you hear furniture banging. And in that same place, the woman, when I shout at my kids, everyone hears. It's dead silent at night. I wake my then partner up, and he's like, he's the man of the house, we're not getting involved. And I'm like, she's shrieking, there's 2 kids in there. Her son is the age of my son, I cannot. He turns around and he sleeps, and he's like, I can't hear anything. And I sat, and that day something died inside of me. Because we can raise it with each other when we as women are shouting our kids to discipline. And this woman is screaming, and I'm like, if I don't do something, I won't be able to live with myself. I didn't know what to do, but we have to do something. And when you raise it, those same women in that society, you know what I was told? Ah, you know how she is? She must have done something. She's hardly ever at home. And I'm like, do you know why? As you said, we're working 20-hour jobs so she can put food on the table for her kids. And we can then sit there. Is that what we have become? Because gender-based violence doesn't have a face. And there's all these stories. And we fight with each other, for each other. I'm not saying let's not fight with our government counterparts. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, and we can sit here and fight with each other, but for each other. For that woman. For that 5-year-old boy. Do you know, we spoke about the impact with the Ubuntu framework in terms of rage. I'm a mother too. I could never understand, and from an ECD perspective, his name was Ashton, the rage that 5-year-old had. And we need intervention from an ECD and an educational perspective, because, why didn't we understand, why does this child have so much of rage? Because of what he was experiencing. And what do? We want to medicate, and there's something, because we're not hearing those stories. So when I reflect, progressive sheltering for me is about getting these stories out. It's about inclusion of everyone, and it's about gratitude, because we can actually stand here and talk and share about our stories. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I really, really want to thank everyone for all that you're doing, because I know how hard it can be, right? We don't see, we don't hear, we're frustrated. To all the NPOs that spoke, we hear you, we see you, and we're fighting for you together. Thank you. Our speaker, Miss Elaine Brass. Yeah, okay, thank you. Let me introduce Miss Elaine. Welcome. I always love seeing a fellow CASA. Elaine Brass is a chartered accountant of South Africa for over 20 years. She joined the Auditor General of South Africa in March 2003, sorry. Elaine's passion for the public sector then flourished at the Auditor General over a period of 4 years as a manager and then later as a senior manager until she joined the HWCTA in December 2007 as CFO. Elaine has been with the HWCTA as CFO for over 11 years. During this time, she's acted as CEO for almost 3 years. She was then appointed as Chief Executive Officer of the HWCTA on the 1st of January 2019, and then again in October 2022 for a period of 5 years to March 2025. Over this period, the HWCTA has attained an unqualified audit for 15 years with a clean audit for 4 years. In this time, she has established networks and has had deep insight into the sectors of health and social development. Her leadership and people skills have ensured a good reputation for the HWCTA with excellent performance. She's passionate about skills development and making a difference for the people of South Africa. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Program Director. And what can I say after that? I mean, that was just so passionate and so deep. It makes me sad, and yet it also gives me hope. So thank you for that. I'm from the Health and Welfare Sector Education and Training Authority, and in that, our organization is automatically a partner of social development and civil society and all the organizations that make up the sector of social development. The HWCTA absolutely admires the coming together for the 4th time for discussions. It's actually progressive discussions on gender-based violence and femicide by civil society and government. And this is based on the successes of the indaba 1, 2, and 3. Meaningful discussions and collaborative efforts towards creating a safer and more supportive environment for ending gender-based violence is exactly what we need to be doing. I just want to take you back. I report to the Department of Higher Education and Training, by the way, and we have noted the President's address in July of this year, and this informed certain strategic priority areas for the post-education and training sector, which we are a part of, and these priorities and strategic priorities is aimed at ending poverty, unemployment and inequality, and the medium-term development plan has been formulated. In the next 5 years, we will advance 3 strategic priorities. One is to drive inclusive growth and job creation, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, and to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. So you're probably wondering why I have told you about those strategic priority areas. As the HWCTA, we have had to take that into account already in our current annual performance plan, and we've had to revise that performance plan to take into account these strategic priorities. And I want to bring to your attention the strategic priority number 3, which was to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. And part of that is where the department will continue to align with a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide and ensure implementation oversight across the post-school education and training system. So that is in our current plans and will be in our plans in the next 5 financial years. So as the HWCTA, we looked at that specifically, and at the moment we have partnered with Higher Health, which is an entity of the Department of Higher Education and Training, and other institutions to look at fighting gender-based violence at higher education institutions. We have also supported specifically an occupationally developed skills program called Civic Education, and we are busy rolling that out, and we want to roll that out to every single citizen of South Africa. So it'll get to everybody. And in terms of that civic education, it talks about the matters that you have spoken about yesterday: gender-based violence and femicide, substance abuse, sexually transmitted diseases, financial literacy. It also gives a soft skills education to those who can then have a leading edge in trying to get employment. So this is really a groundbreaking program, skills program, and it is pitched at a NQF level 5. So everyone is able to access it. There is no entry requirements, and this particular program, we are hoping, will be changing mentalities and changing our society over the near future. I just wanted to tell you about that. And I'm going to be sharing that program with the Department of Social Development. So in light of the escalated challenges posed by gender-based violence and femicide in our society, the HWCTA stands firmly in support of the collaborative efforts with the Department of Social Development. And sorry, by the way, I haven't even greeted everyone. Oh my gosh, your introduction was just like mind-blowing. So let me greet the Minister in absentia and the directors, officials of the Department of Social Development, and I believe social development, provincial social developments are also here. Obviously civil society, communities, other organizations, and ladies and gentlemen. So the HWCTA, together with the Department of Social Development, will aim to create a safer environment for all individuals. The epidemic, and it is an epidemic, of gender-based violence and femicide calls for a united front. It is a pressing issue that undermines the dignity and safety of our communities. By working hand in hand with the Department of Social Development and other stakeholders, we are committed to implementing strategies that enhance awareness, provide training, and promote resources aimed at prevention and support for survivors and changing, most important, mentalities. Our collective mission includes educating communities by fostering awareness around gender-based violence and femicide. We can empower individuals with knowledge that inspires change in attitudes and behaviors. We want to equip professionals in the health and social development services sectors with the necessary skills to support victims effectively and to recognize early warning signs of violence. Establishing robust support structures for survivors to ensure they receive the help they need, including legal, psychological, and social support. So it is crucial that every member of our society understands the importance of standing against gender-based violence and femicide. We all have a role to play to create a safe space where individuals feel valued and protected. The HWCTA will work with the Department of Social Development as well as other organizations in the continued fight against gender-based violence and femicide, and we have already identified certain interventions that will support this collaboration. Only together do we have the power to make a significant impact in the fight against this epidemic. To the Honourable Minister of the Department of Social Development, the HWCTA will partner in this cause to make a difference in our country. Thank you.
It's about the civic education course to be rolled out. As I was listening, I think what I missed is the training on governance. What we are seeing in communities, governance, you would have NGOs, getting ordinary, maybe retired teachers, retired nurses, or abafundis, from the community to sit in boards. And you'd find these people just don't know, what they are doing. And as a result, this leads to, collapse of many NGOs. And I think what was shared yesterday, with fundraising, and I don't think that would be possible in most communities where there's such a skills shortage. So I think it's something to look into. There were times I was telling colleagues that maybe people should just be trained, capacitated in case you are elected into a board of an NGO. Then you just don't walk in not knowing what's expected of you. And I think this civic education should also include that, instead of just giving skills for young people that are meant, to enable them to secure employment. But I think, for sustaining and strengthening of our NGOs, I think that kind of training would be very important. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Terani Manganyi, and I'm from the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Response Fund. I think, to follow up on his question, I'm just wondering, as you were speaking, I was asking myself the how. Yes, you outlined your plans over the next 5 years or whatever period, but I didn't get the how. And I was wondering about the possibility of focusing on capacity development, particularly for community-based organizations. So I know that obviously Department of Social Development, for example, supports a lot of NGOs on the ground. We support a lot of NGOs on the ground. Some of the NGOs are co-funded. So this year alone, we funded 132 organizations, and that's not all there is. 90 million investment. And I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity to draw synergies and leverage on each other's resources, particularly around the capacity development, because I think one of the greatest challenges that the NPO sector is facing is the capacity strengthening question. And as it's been outlined yesterday, Dr. Dango has been doing some of that work, but she can only do so much. And I was just wondering if you have any plans to foster capacity strengthening, particularly for the NPOs at the community level. And I think that would also improve on the sustainability of these organizations. Thank you very much.
So you ended specifically with a word called sustainability. And in terms of what you were inquiring about, is we have to ensure sustainability of NGOs, community-based organizations, because these are the organizations that are on the ground, that are doing the work. And as has been indicated, there's not enough awareness. But let me tell you, when somebody's in trouble, they know these organizations are there, and these organizations open their doors to help people. As the HWCTA, we do support NGOs, NPOs, community-based organizations. 2 years ago, we actually ran skills programs for this sector relating to governance and ethics in particular. Last year, we were also running programs and funding on fundraising, for example. We actually currently have a pilot in place that has proven to be very, very successful, where we have funded the internships and skills training of finance graduates that have been, 100 of them, that have been placed in various ECD centers. So these are some of the innovations that we are doing within the sectors to actually try and assist with capacity. But the HWC will continue to assist with more capacity. Ma'am, perhaps if you can take down my details, tell me a little bit more about what you do, and then as soon as our funding window opens again, which will open quite soon again, we can then have a look at other interventions. But definitely I hear your call for governance. It's not part of the civic program as it stands, but a very, very good point. I will certainly take that back to Higher Health to have a look at. It is so important, governance in any organization, because if governance fails, it is very likely that the organization will fail, which is a pity, because we do need NGOs to remain and be sustainable. So we take that, and also the skills programs that HWC can offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine, I was wondering if you could share with us, how do NPOs actually access funding from the health and welfare SETA? So that was one question. The other question is that over a period of years, one of the organizations I work with has been struggling to get accredited. So the process was that somebody from the health and welfare SETA requested all the documentation. They then came to the organization, went through everything, and they said, things look fine and you'll hear from us. And it ended there and nothing ever happened. And so the organization continued with the training, but it's not accredited, and that's actually holding them back, because people want to have accredited training. So that would be my second question. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those questions. So what we do every year, we have an annual performance plan. We have various indicators, and we have budget attached to those indicators. We then have a window that we open called an expression of interest. This expression of interest is advertised quite widely on our social media. So please, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram. Please go and follow us so that you can then get the information as and when it comes out. So there'll be an expression of interest. There will be specific expressions of interest relating to NGOs and what we believe the sector needs relating to that. So then you respond to the expression of interest. Unfortunately, there is some compliance that has to be met. You have to have a letter of good standing by the Department of Social Development. You have to have certain registrations with CIPRO. We need a proof of address and a few other documentation. But we are here to always help you get through that. Why do we have compliance? It's because unfortunately we have had fraud, and some people disguise themselves as doing good in the sector when they are just out to take money for their own benefit. So that's unfortunately why we have to have certain compliance. So you apply for the expression of interest. If you have met the criteria, then we will come out and do a site visit. And once you are approved with that site visit, then we offer you funding. We offer you a conditional letter of approval, and then we will give you funding. So that is how you access funding of the HWC. If, for instance, if you look at that expression of interest and you have something that's completely outside that, but very innovative and very impactful, we would like to hear from you anyway. So we don't take ad hoc requests, but if there's, like, for instance, something that's very innovative, that is almost a shock in the system that we haven't thought about as the need of the sector, then please come through and make contact with us. With regards to accreditation, we're in a bit of a difficult period at the moment because we have ended the legacy qualifications. We are now into the period of occupationally developed qualifications. So I'm not sure which qualifications the organization needed accreditation with. Accreditation does rest with the QCTO, the ultimate decision for accreditation. And you have rightly said, Doctor, that you can train without accreditation, but there are certain qualities that come through with having accredited training. So maybe if that organization can contact me, let's have a look as to why something happened that they weren't given accreditation. But of course, maybe we can then guide them as to what occupationally developed qualifications we have, and we have 32 at the moment. So maybe they can link to one of those qualifications, and we can then guide them through the process. Thank you.
As Elaine was talking, and based on what we discussed yesterday, compliance, governance is essential, and the help is there, and it's available, and it's about seeking that out and asking. And I know that the NPOs you shared, you go from pillar to post, but hopefully with this and with the call to actions, we can change that narrative, because given my background as well, I understand the importance of governance and why we do it. It is to protect everyone, and the help is absolutely there. And I live by the motto, ask and you shall get, seek and you shall find. So absolutely, let's not forget that. Thank you so much, Elaine. Introducing our next topic, a report on the investigations into administrative deficiencies relating to GBV-related matters in South African criminal justice system, is Miss Veronica Pillay. Her bio is outstanding, so I hope I'm going to do justice introducing you in short. Veronica holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She's a lawyer working in constitutional, human rights, public and administrative fields of law, and she's currently an acting senior manager, public investigation and integration, coastal provinces at the Office of the Public Protector, where she's involved, amongst others, to manage operations and investigations in the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and the Northern Cape. Achievements and career milestones. She's currently the title holder for Mrs. Universe South Africa 2023. She's won the Gauteng Panache Wow Woman of Wonder Award in 2023. She's a registered mediator with the Mediators Council of South Africa. She holds a public financial management for non-financial managers certification, negotiation, conflict management, together with media and communication. Welcome, Veronica.
Good morning, beautiful people. How are you? I'm saying beautiful people, but I want to say beautiful woman. Just tap the woman next to you and say, hey, beautiful. And you don't have to just stop at a hey, beautiful. Maybe you want to give them another compliment. Because not all of us get compliments every single day, ne? The pointer. I want to thank the entities that put this function together. Sitting here yesterday, I was so humbled. I think the first word I must use is humbled. Because I'm not just part of an indaba, but I was privileged to be part of real talk. And that's what we need in our society. We need real talk. The quote by Maya Angelou resonates so deeply with my heart. She says, every woman who stands up for herself stands up for all women. So give yourselves a mighty round of applause, because it takes might, it takes courage, and it takes tenacity. What is courage? Courage is the absence of fear. For each and every day that you stand up, you go out into the world, and you plan deliberately and intentionally so to make a difference in the lives of other people. So today I'm going to speak to you on our report, which is the systemic investigation into administrative deficiencies relating to the gender-based violence within the South African justice system. And I'm so pleased that the Public Protector was invited today, and I apologize on her behalf. She's out of the country. But I think as I go through this presentation, you're going to be able to understand some of the work that we do and how you can approach our office for assistance. So the Public Protector is established in terms of the Constitution. Part of our powers are to investigate any conduct in state affairs that is suspected to be improper or to result in impropriety. What we also deal with is aspects of undue delay. We were speaking about delays in matters that take a long time to go through the court processes and ultimately result in some form of judgment. Unfair, discourteous behavior, abuse of power, dishonesty, improper dealings with public money. So amongst others, our principles are accountability, integrity, and responsiveness. We also, our jurisdiction is a very wide mandate because it comes up from the office of the presidency, then goes down to all spheres of national government, provincial government. I like our guy, he's keeping in line with how fast I'm going. Provincial government, local government, and other organs of state and public bodies. So it's also your SOEs as well that are included in this. So how would we deal with complaints? Ideally, you can approach one of our provincial offices or our head offices. You can raise complaints and lodge them. Also, what we deal with, like this investigation that we did on GBV systemic, is we see what the trends are in terms of what are the majority of complaints. And we all know, sitting here, that GBV is a scourge. It is a crisis. It is something that we need to attend to speedily, deliberately. And I like the fact that when we started day one, there was so much of passion. I wish I could detract from this presentation and just speak about what I heard yesterday. There was so much of passion, there was so much of enthusiasm, and that's what we need to fight this scourge of gender-based violence. What we ideally do in the course of our investigations is we ask what happened. What happened? What is the nature of the complaint? What should have happened, which is determined by the legal standard or the legal principles? Then we find out, where did the discrepancy happen? Maybe there was a specific legal principle that the courts should have applied or departments should have applied when meting out. Maybe they didn't meet the Butterpele principles. I heard Nicole speaking about knocking on doors 3, 4, 5 times. So now remember, at the Office of the Public Protector, we are an institution of last resort. I must say that first, because you must try to access justice. But if you go once, you go twice, you go 3 times, and you don't get assistance, and you feel like you've reached a brick wall, then come to us, because that would then be where our mandate begins. What is the remedies that we have? We give binding, and I'm going to repeat that, binding remedial actions. What does that mean? It means that when at the end of our investigation, we produce a report, that report is binding on any government or state entity, meaning that they are compelled to comply. The only way that they can detract and or not comply is if they approach a court of law. So give us a round of applause. So what does the report speak to? It focused on the key institutions that we identified, and our magistrate here is smiling from Justice. I'm sorry, she's now become a very dear friend of mine. Thank you to the organizers for introducing her to me. But she's the one that I know from the Department of Justice here today. So the key institutions were the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, SAPS, who we've heard so much about, and DSD, who's also here today. The investigation started, and how it sparked was There was a conversation between our public protector and the Deputy Minister for Justice regarding the Korki matter. I'm sure all of you have seen it in the news. Those of you that come from Cape Town know the details. I won't go into the details of the matter, but safe to say that when she approached the court for assistance, she then left because the process was too tedious for her. And we know as victims, and I am a proud survivor of domestic violence. You can give me a round of applause now, an activist. And I mean, obviously, when you go to court, there is so much of emotional turmoil and trauma that you go through. Imagine you have to sit there and you have to wait. I mean, I can only just think the emotions that she's been through. And then she went back home. And needless to say, the story ended with the fact that she was murdered by her partner 4 days later. After the public protector had conducted that investigation, we could not find any negative findings against the Department of Justice, but safe to say that it tugged at our heartstrings because of all the matters that were reported to our office, because of the trends that we were seeing happening in the media and happening all around our country. So what we then did is we embarked on this systemic investigation. So the issue that we identified for investigation, and I'm going to go through each one for all three departments. So the issue for the Department of Justice was that whether the Department of Justice did not put adequate measures in place to protect victims of gender-based violence, and then go on to check if there was any acts of maladministration. The issue against the SAPS was whether the SAPS did not put adequate measures in place to respond, because the SAPS, they are our first line of defense, if we can say, right? Whether they did not put measures in place to respond to incidents of gender-based violence. And then with DSD, and if I look at you or I look at you, it's not because you did something wrong, but because you're representing a particular institution. So DSD, whether DSD did not put adequate measures in place to support victims of gender-based violence. So what happened during this investigation? We then went out and we did what we call an inspection in loco at 38 courts across the 9 provinces, interviewing court users, interviewing staff, engaging with NGOs, doing written submissions, Mosaic, POA, Wise for Africa, some of the NGOs, because remember, we cannot interview everyone. So we just had to do sort of like a cross-section. We also did an investigation at the GBV Command Center. We did an inspection of one shelter, the Marley Martin shelter, which I must commend the DSD, was in exceptionally fabulous, I don't know what the word is, but the way that they function. And we also had written submissions from the DOJ, SAPS, and the DSD. So what should have happened, and these are, you can just have a look at them, all the legislative prescripts that we dealt with whilst we were dealing with this investigation. So the 38 courts that were inspected by the public protector, with the exception, there was only one court, which was the Point Branch Family Court in KwaZulu-Natal. All of the others were not kept in an operational manner that supports effective service delivery, right? They were old, the buildings were old, the court buildings were dilapidated. Some of them had been recently renovated, but they had structural defects, they had roof leaks, and if you look at that picture on the screen, that's where the complainants were waiting, in the parking lot. So there was also inadequate office equipment, some of the telephone lines were broken, they didn't have computers, the courts did not have a functioning ICMS system, they had a manual capturing of cases. Some of the courts, like in Mamelodi, Garangoa, and Vereniging, they didn't have waiting areas. So I'm going to go down quickly to the findings. The findings against the DOJ was that the various courts visited didn't have private or sufficient consultation rooms, and the clerks of court consulted with victims in shared small office spaces. And then furthermore, they had human resource capacity constraints. So you can imagine, as a victim of domestic violence, walking into a court, it's hard enough that you have to tell your story. But now you have to tell your story with other people, other clerks sitting in the same room, performing different functions, other people sitting in the room, and that invades heavily on your right to dignity and your right to privacy. Majority of the courts do not have proper functioning filing systems, and I mean, this picture is extremely atrocious for me. Can you imagine if you're going to court, right, and you want them to now locate your file? And I mean, I've experienced this. My maintenance file got lost. My domestic violence file got lost because I can imagine what system is in there when they have to go and look for my file when it's my date to appear in court, right? So for me, this is like justice coming full circle when I had to do this investigation. So majority of the courts do not have proper filing spaces. There were files that were scattered on the floor. The files are sometimes kept in police cells. There's no separation between maintenance, domestic violence, and harassment files. There was a lack of assistance being provided to applicants to complete forms. And for me, this was really, one of the findings that really tore, because there are some people that come to court that can't speak English, right? In the first instance, it's not their first language. There are some people that are old, and I mean, abuse of old people is a real thing. So they can't articulate themselves well. They can't write. They can't read. And now you give them these cumbersome forms to fill out. How the hell are they going to fill it out? And how are they going to fill it out well enough to be able to get the protection order or the interim protection order granted in the first place? Are we not making an ask that is impossible? There's long waiting times. There's inconsistencies in timeframes regarding to which when protection orders are being dealt with. There's a lack of a communication between applicants, court users, and the choice of language and court interpreters. So, what was our remedial action against the DOJ? And one of them was within 210 days, they are to develop the standards for a model court that will include all infrastructure, such as buildings, human resource capacity, ICT, furniture, and office equipment that will be adequate for the various levels of courts to ensure optimal service delivery. They are within 180 days to conduct an audit of all courts as established in terms of Section 2 of the Magistrates Courts Act to determine the infrastructure needs, upgrades, and renovations. They are within 180 days to submit to the public protector a detailed project plan for the construction, renovation, procurement of all courts identified in the audit with clear dates, turnaround times, targets, and deliverables indicating how buildings and ITC will be upgraded, the procurement plan for the furniture and office equipment. Within 180 days to determine the human resource needs of all the courts and develop a plan with clear targets and deliverables. They are also to audit their current filing systems in place. They are also to implement wider language options, and there it is, for print or oral communication based on the needs of each court and simplify the court application forms. They are also to ensure, they do have an online portal, to ensure that that online portal for application of protection orders is functional and available in all courts and to assist complainants to use them when they apply for protection orders after hours. Now we come to the burning one. The findings against SAPS. Some of the police stations do not have victim-friendly rooms. The victims are forced to relate their stories again. In crowded SAP stations, some of these police stations are rural and inaccessible. Victims are sent to court from the police stations without even receiving medical attention at the first point when they come to the police station, because we've had court staff say to us that we get victims coming in with protection orders and they are bruised, they are battered, they are bleeding, they need stitches. But how did the members of SAPS bring them to the court without even first getting their medical attention? I mean, that is completely unfathomable for me. Some of the police members are also aware that criminal offenses have occurred, but they are reluctant to register the cases. They don't inform victims of their right to institute criminal action. So if, for example, you approach the SAPS to get a protection order, or you say, I've been beaten up by my husband or my partner, they will then say to you, okay, you must go to court if it's a Saturday or if it's a Sunday. Instead of saying to you, come, let us open up a docket for you. Let us take a case. And then, I mean, that's assault. They could easily attend to the matter expediently so and give the victim relief without passing the buck to now letting this victim go to court and wait for this protection order to be granted. Some police officers are also very reluctant to arrest perpetrators without a warrant, even if they see that there is evidence of violence against the victim. I've spoken about the victim-friendly rooms, medical attention. Applicants, and this is also something that came out in day one, applicants are often left on their own to serve the respondents with these protection orders. I almost want to say, can I get an amen? Because this is completely and totally ludicrous for me, that you have now been brutalized by this man, but you must now go with the police. And often they put you in the back of the van as if you are the perpetrator. You must now go with the police, go to the perpetrator. You must now be traumatized again, have a secondary victimization, and then you must get this protection order. But if you don't do it, it's not done. So in some instances, there are delays by SAPS to respond to scenes of domestic violence. But in some instances, they do respond, but most of the time, when there's a domestic violence incident, they don't prioritize it. And they are supposed to actually have designated vehicles at their station to respond to domestic violence, which they don't have. There's inadequate training for SAPS members on how to give effect to GBV legislation, how to deal with victims. How often have you heard of victims going to SAPS stations and they're treated like they are murderers, or they've done some sort of corporate espionage, instead of treating them with kindness, with empathy, with compassion? There's no collaboration between SAPS and DSD as envisaged in the Constitution. What was a remedial action by the Public Protector? That within 180 days, SAPS needs to conduct a needs analysis for all police stations that do not have victim-friendly rooms and submit an implementation plan for the effective response to GBV cases. The plan should include short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions. They are also to conduct regular training for SAPS members that focus on gender sensitivity and the seriousness of GBV and its impact on victims and society. They are also to develop and submit a collaborative plan between SAPS and DSD relating to the provision of support services to victims of GBV, and that is where you guys come in, the shelters. The findings against DSD. The evidence indicates that there is insufficient shelters to cater for the victims of GBV. So that was something that came out as well during day one, that there is insufficient shelters. The key prevention and support programs that are being implemented by the DSD do not have sufficient human resource capacity to support efficient service delivery. So this brings me back to the question of cooperative governance. How do we do it together? Sorry, I just need to open this. How do we do it together? How do we work together? How do we hold hands so that we can have a society that is functioning, so that we can assist our victims?
And now for the findings against the DSD. The GBVCC, which is the Gender Based Violence Command Center. Does everybody know what that is? Okay. So when we did an inspection there, and I also was part of the team that went down there, fortunately, they were not adequately resourced and they didn't have a full staff complement of 38 social workers. And they were providing technical and support services to the entire population. They had a wonderful program called the Everyday Heroes program. However, it was not adequately resourced because they have approximately 370 trained ambassadors. So now, can you imagine what the population of the country is? Comparatively. There is a lack of a multi-sectoral approach where all relevant departments can work together and have an integrated electronic data management system in relation to GBV. So the point is that if you are passionate enough about what you do and you realize that there's pockets of expertise and experience in different departments and you make a choice to hold hands together, you can do it. I believe that you can do it. So the remedial actions taken against the DSD was that in 180 days again, they are to submit a detailed project plan to determine the human resource needs of the GBVCC and to develop a plan with clear timelines and dates indicating how the capacity constraints at the GBVCC will be addressed. They are to submit a detailed project plan to determine the need for additional shelters. Give yourselves a clap because this is coming your way for GBV victims, and develop a plan with clear timelines, dates indicating how the need for additional shelters will be addressed. They are to submit a collaborative plan between SAPS and DSD relating to the provision of support services to victims of GBV, such as trauma counseling, referral to shelters, and any other collaborative effort within this ambit. Now, when we speak about implementation, now when you pitch an idea, I've got 2 kids. So when I have to try to get them to buy in, for example, it's school exams now. And when I want to get them to study, I have to use some form of a tactic to get them to buy in, right? Because I want them to study. So what was our buy-in with this idea? And I'm so pleased to report that from the highest levels of government, this report has been accepted in its entirety. I was also privileged to be part of our team 2 weeks ago where we presented our report to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Justice, who also commended the work of the Public Protector, who also accepted this report, who requested a copy of this report and indicated that they are going to assist us because we are not toothless dogs. We are Rottweilers. Rotties. And that is our stance. And they have indicated that they are also going to take up their constitutional mandate seriously to monitor the implementation of this report, which I think should give us some, what was the word we used? Hope. Hope. So in terms of the feedback that we got, and I can only give you feedback that's from this week, from the DOJ, because remember, this is a process. So this is what they've done so far as I go through the implementation. This is from the DOJ. There is a model court blueprint that is in the process of being finalized in consultation with the branch court administration, the DPWI, and the judiciary. There are going to be more dedicated sexual offences courts that are in the process of being designated by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. And they've also considered that more needs to be done to develop all court infrastructure to be victim friendly, especially in gender-based violence, sexual offences, and domestic violence cases. And they have undertaken to coordinate and upgrade all of the courts together with DPWI. They have done an audit of all infrastructure needs, and they will prioritize according to their budget. I don't like that part, but they will prioritize according to their budget. And they've submitted a detailed project plan for construction, renovation, and procurement of all courts identified in the audit, with clear turnaround times, with clear dates, targets, deliverables. So they are on board, the Department of Justice, and they want to help. They have appointed also a chief information officer to deal with the ICT needs, the modernizing and the upgrading. They have procured 600 personal computers. They have procured and distributed to lower court 600 scanners. They will facilitate the upgrading into the IER, that's the electronic repository. They will have a procurement for hosted telephone systems, and they've commenced with the project for upgrading the LAN and WAN network. Regarding human resource constraints, the DOJ is in the process of putting together a list and order of critical requirements for posts to be filled. They've also provided dates for training by the Justice College, and the dates end in the end of the financial year 2025. They have also included the need for purpose-built record rooms, because we saw the police cells and where the files are currently residing. They've also started an initiative to digitize and store existing court records electronically in courts. They are piloting now the electronic repository that I've told you about. They have provincial language managers in all 9 provinces whose duty is to ensure that the languages spoken in the provinces are readily available. Regarding accessibility of courts, after hours accessibility, they've said that all district courts, including rural-based courts, are to keep a daily after hours register so that protection orders can also be granted after hours. Because, I mean, with you were speaking about alcohol. When does it happen? You're working from Monday to Friday. Well, that's what I know. On a Friday evening, you come from work, and that's when the drama starts, and that's when court is usually closed. So at least this is an achievement for us, that we can get these interim protection orders granted over the weekend after hours. They have a solution for online application for domestic violence protection orders. With regards to SAPS has also accepted the findings, and this is what they've done. They've agreed to amend the directives, including the national instructions on sexual offences and national instruction on domestic violence. So remember, the SAPS is like the worker bees. So we don't want a situation where we go to SAPS and they say, well, this is not what we're supposed to do. So we have to start with legislative reform, and that's what they're busy with at the moment. They have a training manual, and they've indicated that they have training interventions. With regards to supply chain management, they have completed a contract to provide victim-friendly rooms over the next 5 years, and they will provide an average of 20 victim-friendly rooms. Now, we know that it is difficult to construct a building and how long it takes. So what they've decided as a short-term solution is to use park homes. And we're happy with that, so long as victims can tell their stories and have dignity and respect while they are relating their stories. They have a GBV desk which they've established that is functional at police stations, but obviously we won't know if it's functional. We will rely on you to tell us whether it is functional. With regards to DSD has also accepted the findings of the report, and they've indicated that DSD's Human Resources Unit is focusing on the assessment of the overall departmental capacity workforce that is aimed at addressing the workforce challenges, which includes prioritizing the identified human resource deficiencies at the GBVCC. Now, regarding GBV shelters, there are 47 districts with established GBV shelters which are fully operational. There will be an additional shelter in the Western Cape, in the Northwest, and 3 more in Limpopo. The DSD has indicated that they've managed to secure funding, guys, from partners such as the EU and criminal assets recovery accounts to support this priority. So let's just talk about it for a minute as we end. There is money. Our purses are not dry. We have available finances. Did we all get that, or should I repeat that? We have it. And let me just say to you that if you get to a point, and I'm going to be bold, because if you're not bold, then you don't get anything done. I'm going to be bold and I'm going to say, if you don't get assistance from the DSD, from the SAPS, from the Department of Justice, remember our mandate stops when the matter is already in court. We can't intervene, right? But if you're trying to access justice and you knock once, you knock twice, don't even worry about knocking 3 times. Come to our offices, raise a complaint. Let us help you, because this issue is high on our agenda. It's high on my agenda. It's high on our Public Protector South Africa's agenda. And as you can see, we are willing, we are able, we are passionate, and we are ready to take them on if they are not doing what they are supposed to do in terms of their constitutional mandate. So in closing, I want to say this to you, and I want to encourage you and say, continue to do the beautiful work that you are doing in the various spaces that you are operating in. And I want to leave you with this, because as women, because I take my hat off to women, because I know what I do. And I heard today what you're doing. So as women, if we raise our voices in unity, in one accord, we can cause an avalanche. So let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica, for your very inspiring presentation, particularly for people like us that are on the ground and struggle so much. So yesterday we talked a lot about the funding issue in Gauteng, where shelters have been closed down. The GCCC that has been trying desperately, as a first port of call to go to the department and try and resolve the matter. But now that this matter is still far from resolved, and you've offered your services very publicly, what is it that you can do to assist us? We'd be very willing to work with you, both as the NSM, as well as shelters within the Gauteng province.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, it's not just me. When I stand here, it's not Veronica. It's the Office of the Public Protector South Africa, the Public Protector South Africa. So our mandate is a constitutional mandate, right? It's a mandate for you as the South African public to be able to access. And so long as you've tried to access justice and you've failed, then you come to our offices and you raise a complaint. I've told you the ways that complaints can be raised. You can also go online onto our, but I wouldn't say that because I've met you. So you are most welcome to come into our offices, our head office in Pretoria. I think you have my number. You can even contact me and I will arrange for someone to consult with you, to take a complaint form, and then we see how we go. So we also have investigative processes in place, and we have our standard operating practices as well. We have, so we will follow our process, and we will see where we go. Remember, we are an independent institution. We don't represent you. We don't represent the department. we represent justice, fairness, and equality. So if you believe that, you know, the, the Bachapela principles were not followed, that they've shut a door which should have been opened unfairly so, there's been some kind of maladministration, then it's our responsibility to investigate, and we will do so without fear, favor, or prejudice.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, ma'am. And I must acknowledge that the departments, the multi-sectoral approach, they are working very well. However, as a social worker at a ground roots level, some of the challenges that we find, there's a big lack when it comes to the aftercare services. We do have clients whereby survivors who have active protection orders, but after they've exited the shelters, they come back being battered women again. So I'm challenging us as stakeholders, what can we do in order to sustain the aftercare service for the best interest of our survivors? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Veronica. My question to you is, why should we feel hope in everything you've presented? Because what you presented in the remedial actions is not new. Everything, I went through the report when it was released. 99.9% of those remedies have been there since 2018. They started with the 24 demands, they were there. They translated to the declaration. Everything that those departments are saying is part of the NSP. These are not new remedies. These are things that, as civil society, we have told government to do. So, why are we so hopeful it's going to happen now when it's stuff that has been promised for the last 6 years? Thank you.
So I'm not sure. You're probably speaking about declarations and things like that. But when I'm saying hopeful, remember what I said when I started. We are not toothless dogs. As I've illustrated to you when I've said what is partial implementation, right? We've given 120 days. Our report has just been released. And despite it just being released, we've got, so far, this is what is being done, right? So our responsibility as the Office of the Public Protector is to ensure, we've never produced a report of this nature ever. So when you speak about people have already been asking government to do things and they haven't done, I can't speak to that. When you speak about these things have already been, you know, in the atmosphere, in the departments, it's things that you've been asking for and they haven't done it, I can't speak to it as the Office of the Public Protector. But what I can say to you that this report is the first report of its kind that has been produced by the Office of the Public Protector. We've never released any other report. And in terms of implementation, as I've shown you, the partial implementation is that they are doing, they are running, and they are reporting to us regularly. So if they fail to do it, then there's going to be serious consequences and serious ramifications of that. So I can only speak for what I have now, what we have now, but I think we must also, as much as it's emotional, as much as there's frustration, I don't want us to belittle hope. Because if, for example, a normal person is now giving instructions or saying, DSD you need to do, and DSD doesn't do, what is your remedy? What is compelling DSD to comply? That is a question you need to ask. Yes, I don't deny that they are supposed to have done certain things, and I'm not here to speak on behalf of government or department's non-compliance. I'm here to say that us, as the Office of the Public Protector, we have a responsibility, and we are doing our responsibility. So when you come to us, we will do. So at the back end, if I think about it, and you know, you're going to SEPs, and I had my car was, I had a car accident 2 weeks ago, and I approached SEPs, and I know what their responsibility is. They are supposed to take an accident report. But as I walked in, and I went to uh, get this accident report, they told me I must drive all the way back to Pretoria. Now I don't have a car. My car was taken on a flatbed. So I had to stand there and, call the station commander and then get somebody to come in and make the accident report because they were sending me somewhere else. So my point of telling you the story is to say it depends who the authority is that is giving the instruction that makes the difference. I'm sorry to say it. It shouldn't be so. It is very sad that as a normal person who is supposed to be able to access their rights cannot access their rights. But yeah, we've done what we're supposed to do.
Thank you so much for your time. There's lots of more. There are others. I can't time. I'm sorry. She is here. We can discuss. Thank you. Token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. Thank you. And just to say, we love Rottweilers. We love them. In the interest of time, and our next speaker does have a timing limitation, so we'll go straight into it. An overview of the NSP by Advocate Brenda Madumise. Advocate Brenda Madumise is a lawyer by training and a gender activist by choice. She holds a degree in law and business administration and an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, as well as a certified mediator. Thank you. Thank you.
Dumelang. Dumelang. Sanbonani. Good morning. Thank you for extending this invitation. This is my second time at the Indaba. Last year, I had the privilege of engaging with some members of staff of the NSM just to discuss the NSP. It was a closed room, so this time it's open. So I'm hoping that we'll get some action coming out of this presentation. But let me quickly attempt to latch on what was said earlier by the Public Protector's Office. And you would have seen that there were 3 NGOs that participated in that process. That's Power, Mosaic, and ourselves, Wise for Africa. And fundamentally for us, it's not just infrastructure that we're talking about. It's the quality of individuals who are supposed to be in these positions, right? Because when you go to a court and you have a magistrate or a clerk of a court or a prosecutor who doesn't understand how inequality manifests and how violence manifests, then there's a problem. Because the decision that you are going to get is a warped decision, right? And then we must then go to court and appeal those kinds of decisions and pronouncements that are made by individuals who are not grounded in feminist principles, right? So that's my first entry to this discussion. The second one is, as we hold each other accountable, I'm going to hold the public protector accountable because I've got a case that has been 3 years with them against the police, right? They've been investigating it for 3 years, right? That we would have informed this process too. And we in our submission, we made them aware of that, right? So I'm holding you accountable as the public protector. We have written endlessly to say we are waiting. It's 3 years that someone is waiting to know whether she was failed by the police or not, right? Thirdly, is to the health and welfare sector, right? We have to be intentional in how we are allocating resources to assist us to fight what we all call a pandemic and a scourge, right? And a crisis. So if we tell you that we don't have enough forensic nurses, surely we should be investing in that. If we say to you that you don't have enough social workers, we should be investing in social workers. And you sitting with the money, right? So that's what should happen. Okay. Now that I've vented a little bit. Yeah, no. It's just I just want us to be open and honest about some of these things, right? So I don't do the nice stuff. So that's me. I want us to be hard on ourselves, and look at the mirror and see what are we doing different, or what is my contribution? How am I complicit in the scourge? What am I doing? And quickly, I mean, we in a fight at the moment with this concept of Chris Brown, right? Then the the insults that the Women for Change is receiving online from women, right? On a subject matter that is sensitive, but it's true that we can't, when we have a country that talks about the pandemic that is gender-based violence and femicide, and we are here to celebrate someone who has been found guilty of that abuse, and we're going to be twerking because we think, and we as women are the biggest people who have bought the tickets. It wants us to reflect, right? So we will take the insults, we'll take the fight, but we are not going to let you go. We're going to fight back, and we are pushing back. We're writing articles. We are signing the petition. If you see the petition, please sign it and give your support, because that's the test. Are we walking the talk as we are here, right? Thank you. Okay, let me deal with the NSP, the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. I don't think I'm going to be good at moving the slides, and are you going to help me? Thank you. So I thought, why was there need for the NSP? And I must say this up front. This work did not at all diminish the earlier work that was done before on really advancing gender equality in this country, and putting into law and policies the kind of policies and laws that we have. So there had been many periods within these 30 years that has forced most of us to come out and fight to make sure that we put the gender equality agenda on the agenda, right? And coming out of 2018, and this is the slide that is important. Let's just go to that slide that has got the roadmap to the NSP. That's 2018. You had protest by women in this country, but a protest with a difference, and I always say, because they were intentional with the 24 demands. So that we are protesting, but we're not protesting for the sake of protesting. We're giving you solutions as government and all the other stakeholders and partners. We've got 24 demands that must be met. Chief amongst those 24 demands, the first one was that, can we have a summit on gender-based violence and femicide? So remember, this march happened in August 2018. By November, we had our first national summit on gender-based violence and femicide. Out of that summit, we came out with a declaration, right? A declaration that commits government, civil society, private sector, development partners, academia, to say, let's join forces in addressing and arresting this scourge, right? You had an interim steering committee, and I wish that you allowed that steering committee to to continue because we would have achieved massive strides. We would have made massive strides, right? But I mean, I don't want to go to the details why that steering committee was removed, but at some point, we have to stop thinking that we are competing amongst each other or with each other. This is not competition. It's about recognizing that if I join forces with the NSM, that I'm going to get the scale and the impact that I'm looking for, and I need to join and support their initiatives, right? The silo mentality and hoping that you are the only one who must have your name in neon lights, it's not going to take us anywhere. Right? So let's be truthful. If we're talking about doing things together, let's mean it. And not think that there's competition. And maybe the competition is because we're all looking for resources and we're going to the same pot, right? And funders, in the way they do things, is that they force that competition. We all want to outdo each other, so we don't have to fall into that trap. So you had a steering committee that was multi-sectoral, right? It had civil society and a very forceful civil society, I must add. That this process was largely driven by civil society. That's why we got the results. And you need to applaud yourselves for that. Because government realized that you had individuals who were putting everything on the line, but also who were willing to work, right? So when government says we can't do this, the civil society said, no, we're stepping in. This must be done by tomorrow. This must be done tomorrow. And that's why we managed to get this document off the ground, right? It was consulted upon, but we had a team. Tamara is here. She was our chief drafter, right? But we gave her support to ensure, and most of us were there to make sure that she does the work without being disturbed, right? We fight other fires, but because we want this document, because it's important. And it's important in many ways. It's the first time that we said to ourselves, this cannot be done by an individual, can't be done by one organization, can't be done by some government department alone. It's a 360-degree approach that we're looking for. When you say multisectoral in approach, multisectoral in posture, multisectoral in planning, multisectoral in design, multisectoral in execution and implementation. That's what this NSP is about. It's not a silo approach. So when you come up with 6 pillars of this NSP, those pillars in their entirety, 6 of them, they talk to each other. You can't say I'm only in care and support without looking at data management and research and justice and accountability and leadership and prevention. You can't. And you know best that the work that you do in the shelter movement takes care of all the other 5 pillars, because you have someone walking in who has just been battered, right? It's a criminal issue, it's a justice issue, right? That's pillar 3, right? It's pillar 2. What am I going to do to ensure that we prevent this? That's pillar 2, right? That's pillar 4. That's you providing services and support to that individual. But you're also looking at information and data of this individual, how you're managing it, the confidentiality around it, right? And then the leadership that is required from you first, as someone who has had the first contact with this individual in the shelter. So all of the 5 to 6 pillars are interlinked and they work in unison. Okay? Let me go straight to the pillars. That's right. So I've said pillar 1, accountability, coordination, and leadership. We have a fundamental problem of accountability in this country. My goodness, I don't know how many people who will try and explain themselves away why they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Hey, they find reasons, multiple and plethora of those reasons why they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And that's why you have court challenges on a simple thing that you are given the responsibility to execute in terms of your constitutional mandate, and you don't do it. And there are no consequences, right? Did you hear what the public protector said? If that report that was done is not implemented in its entirety, there'll be consequences. But what are the consequences? We're still struggling to get people to go to jail for the shit that they've done, right? Till today, we still, right? But there's supposed to be consequences. So accountability is a big, big one for us. So even when you stand up as a leader, and we were very clear in the 24 demands that we expect government to lead by example, right? That once they are aware of transgressions of impropriety around sexual harassment, sexual assault, they take the lead. Doesn't matter whether it's the leader of a party or the president, or demonstrate leadership. Because the fish rot from the head, right? So if the head does not demonstrate leadership, all shit flows down. It's going to be a problem, right? So that was accountability and leadership. We demanded that, and it has to be seen in almost every single department, in private sector, in academia, with us as civil society. But then coordination, biggest one. Because we have not been able as a country to show where there's movement in addressing and arresting this scourge, right? Instead, we get overwhelmed on a daily basis with what we see. It's a woman who has been killed by her partner, a woman who has been raped, a child. I mean, the killings that happened now in Orange Farm, right? And then you have 17 women killed in Lusikisiki. That's in fact 16 of 15 of those are women killed in Lusikisiki, right? But we have not been able to show the impact of all these interventions that we have had over the years. In the 30 years, we have not been able to. Because we have been working in silos, right? So the coordination was important, so that when you talk of movement in addressing the rape cases, you have the information on your fingertips, and you can safely, with confidence, say that we're moving the needle, right? And how was this coordination supposed to happen? We're supposed to have a GBV council. Where are we? Where are we with the council? Nowhere. But the law has been passed. Fortunately, it was signed in May by the president, right? So it's a law to establish a GBV council. That GBV council's responsibility is to coordinate the activities of all the GBV interventions in the country, vertically and horizontally. Every single South African. So we said, as on the NSP is not a document meant for activists only. It's a responsibility of every single South African who has got an interest to live in a safe, caring South Africa. So it's a responsibility of all of us. Once this document was handed over, we handed it over in 2020 to government, right? In April 2020, we handed it over. Their responsibility was to popularize this document. Now, if I ask the question, how many of us know this document? How many? Show of hands who have read the document from page 1 to the last page. Yeah, these are the same faces that I know, that I knew that are going to say. That's a challenge for me, right? That 2020 we hand over this document. and understand that we said it's GBV is a pandemic, it's a crisis, it's a scourge. But you don't, with this document that is supposed to drive all of us, it's not being popularized, right? We did this infographics, by the way, as an NGO. We did this infographics so that it becomes easy for people to relate to the information contained. So these infographics are available. We gave them last year to the NSM, so that you use them if you are not sure of what is provided for in the NSP. A beautiful summary infographically, right? You go to prevention and restoration of social cohesion, social fabric. This is where we need to be spending 70% of the resources. Prevention is key. Key. In everything that you are doing, this is where we should be concentrating. Every single one of us, whatever program or intervention we're coming on, it has to have a prevention angle in it. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to be here all the time talking about the same things over and over again, right? So prevention is key. Focus on prevention. From the partners that you have, when you're writing a proposal, have a prevention angle. What are the prevention interventions? In the NSP, we give some guidance on what are some of the interventions that you should be focusing on, right? I mean, we can talk about awareness. Awareness has been bastardized for too long, and I think we need to find interventions that are impactful, right? And that are localized. Okay? And then we move on to protection, safety, and justice. Laws are not the messiahs. They can never solve the problem. They can never solve the problem. But they are there to assist, to ensure that you don't have the crime being repeated. Right? So we give you a framework. We tell you that rape is a crime. We tell you that sexual assault is a crime. We tell you that murder is a crime. That when you do those things, the state will step in on your behalf and prosecute, right? And we always have to explain this, because the frustration amongst victims and survivors of gendered violence is, you've reported a rape case, you go to court, you've got a prosecutor who is so uninterested in your matter that you are the one chasing the prosecutor. What's happening? When should I come to court? And you are not getting any feedback, right? And then we get approached to come and assist, and I say, I can't be your lawyer. I can be there on a watching brief, right? But the state is acting on your behalf, and we expect the state to fight and be tenacious and believe in your case, right? Most of the time, it's just pushing paper, because I have to do this, right? And this area, there's a lot that has been done in the country for the 30 years around protection, safety, and justice. We've got all the relevant policies and laws in place. Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Offences Act, all of them, right? You know that we all were participating in the amendments around domestic violence, where the protection order is supposed to be online, and we're still waiting for it to be online. That has not happened, right? We did that around the bail. It was a given that the prosecutors don't oppose bail in gender-based violence cases. We made it. Now it's a must. You must oppose bail, whether they're going to get it or not. But the fact of the matter that you have to stand there and oppose it as the prosecutor, right? Other changes was around the national sense of offenders registry, right? To broaden it, because all along it was only including children and those living with disability. Now we have broadened it to include all victims and survivors of gender violence. So it's available. We're fighting over whether we make it public, and I can tell you now that it was a heated fight in Parliament around privacy, and when people think that perpetrators have got more rights, and we're pushing that it's public, we don't care about, and we can go and fight it in a court of law around whether once you mention the name of a perpetrator in a register, and that register makes known that you are a perpetrator, does it infringe on your rights? Because other jurisdictions, and if you look at the US, I'll give the example. Once someone is declared a sexual offender, the community get to know about it. They even post it on lamppost, or a sexual offender is in our area. Yeah, no, they do. And that's a deterrent, by the way, because who wants to have their faces on a lamppost? So the people change their behavior once that happens. You then have the response, care, support, and healing. And this is where most of you find yourselves, right? And this is a serious one because you're dealing with individuals who cannot be re-traumatized. Your work has to ensure that they don't get re-traumatized. Secondary victimization cannot happen. DSD, and I'm sure there's going to be a discussion around the Victims Empowerment Bill. I don't know where it is, whether we get traction on that bill or not. That bill was supposed to assist us to look at victims and survivors in a different way and give them assistance. So if someone who has murdered someone or raped someone can approach legal aid for assistance, right? Because it's a right given that if you can't afford a lawyer, you then can approach legal aid, and legal aid must support you. But legal aid has not been made available to the victims, many victims of these brutal acts of violence. We joining CALS now on a as amicus in a matter dealing with battered women syndrome, right? The case of, how many women get jailed for killing their partners? And I can tell you now, the swiftness with which the justice moves is amazing when it comes to women. And there's studies to show, right? The ample evidence to demonstrate that biasness and the stereotyping, right? So we joining Center for Applied Legal Studies on this woman who is in prison for killing her husband, and we're bringing the argument of a battered woman syndrome, because the courts have not been accepting that argument and bring expert evidence to talk about that trauma. We don't talk about the trauma of a woman who's been raped. We take it that they must wake up in the morning and function and be productive. And we don't appreciate the trauma that woman has gone through, right? And when she decides to talk about it, we say, why is she talking about it now? My goodness. When was she supposed to talk about it? Your timetable? No. And that's when you don't understand trauma. And we have not spent enough time and resources to talk about what trauma does to all of us, right? And then move on to the economic, it's not empowerment, it's an economic power, actually. Because we know how many of us stay in abusive relationships because we are financially dependent, right? So this was meant to address all of that. Right? It's got suggestions on how to go about it. And as NSM, you need to spend time in ensuring that the women who come through your doors in the shelters get economically empowered. There are many interventions that you can design and implement. And the last one is really research and information systems. And here, we've been talking about developing a baseline around our stats when it comes to rape, sexual assault. Because, we wake up and say 1 in 3, 1 in 5, 1 in 4. But there's no basis for us to say that because we have not tested all of that, right? So this is the work that really should be, the council that is supposed to be in place was supposed to ensure that they work with all the research agencies, and I know HSRC and MRC were willing to start with the baseline, so that once you have a baseline, you will know how to design the appropriate interventions, right? Because we've got the baseline. You know, we get told that we've got hotspots. Hey, the police tell you because of the crime stats that we get, these areas are crime spots. And if you plot them, most of them, can anyone hazard a guess of if you plot all those hotspots, where do you find them? Yeah, black areas with thousands taverns and shebeens running at any given time. So when we advocated for closure of some of these taverns, because remember, I mean, a tavern, the frustrating thing for me is that we tend to think that in these areas there are no bylaws, when there are, right? But there's no enforcement of these bylaws because no one bothers, because we need to accept that gumba gumba music can run from 7 until 4 o'clock in the morning, and I must accept it, and that is my life. No, right? And it requires the fight to continue and keep on being on people's faces to ensure that all of these things are addressed. And if you look at the NSP, it truly, truly gives you how gender-based violence and femicide manifests. We give you the structural drivers of gender-based violence. You know them, but they're there. That is not an excuse. We can't use alcohol as an excuse, by the way. Right? It's a driver. It's not a cause. The cause is you as an individual when you don't have the tools on how you deal with conflict and argument. And you think that when someone said, "Why did you come home at 9 when you said you're coming at 7?" that person deserves to be slapped. And that's how you measure your manhood. Right? So I'm hoping that, where's Zubeida? They will share these infographics, because they summarize the NSP, and that you use it at all times. It must be your go-to all the time. It's your default. If everything fails and you having an argument, you say, let's go to the NSP, right? Because it defines the work that we do on a daily basis. But thank you very much for affording me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mabi, I just want to ask, being part of the ISC and being supported to Mara in writing the NSP, the public prosecutor's report was directed to WISE as one of the people that raised the issue. When you read the report, did you see that the public prosecutor had actually read the NSP in their response? Or did you get that impression?
Remember, they shared with you why they decided to do this, right? The Deputy Minister of Justice sent the complaint because of what happened at the West Belleville Magistrate Court, right? And they got into it, right? There was no mention of the NSP in the document. That's for sure, right? And I suppose there will not be a mention of the NSP, or maybe as a line, just to say this document that should have been referred to or whatever, maybe as a line. But I think for them, they were looking at these deficiencies and inefficiencies that can't be read in isolation of even that document itself. And that's why I'm saying I attended the session organized by the GBV Fund, right? And it amazes me how even in the private sector, they're not aware of this NSP, right? So you interact and you get to know about this document once you are being asked to come and speak, for instance, right? And that's what we need to change, because if government is supposed to intervene, if private sector is supposed to intervene, Surely you can't intervene in blindly, right? You have to know what is in that document. And you can't design programs without knowing what is in that document, right? And maybe that's why we're having a hit and miss at the moment, precisely because of that, right? We have not put resources into prevention strategies as a country. I mean, if you look at what we did with HIV/AIDS and spend money and time and effort in occupying the mindset of South Africans on HIV/AIDS, why haven't we done it with gendered violence? Why? Right? Maybe it's I won't say, but why? And it's something that, so I've answered your question in a roundabout way, but yeah, you and maybe even us in our responses, right? We didn't direct them to the NSP, right? We were dealing with the issues and wanting them to understand our frustrations. When you have a court that says to you, for a protection order you must be at court at 8, and the court only starts at 11, huh? What is that, right? And you must come to court 3 times, and no one cares to understand what he's doing to your pocket, right? That you must come back, and no one considers all of that, right? So those are the issues that we're dealing with. And that's why for me, fundamentally in that report, it's not just structure. Yeah, the courts are a mess and whatnot. Is the caliber of individuals you have. If you are running a court, come on, do something better. Run your court in the most efficient, smart way.